Hello, hello. Pause. Every time I get a streaming key. Hi, folks. Every time I get a streaming key, LastPass is like, do you want to save that? And I'm like, no, of course not. It's not a password. Mr. Certainly, thank you for the test on Twitch chat. I'm only doing Twitch and YouTube today because the other two were off, so I just left them. I don't really care about the Periscope. Periscope or LinkedIn streaming is less important. Hi, Sam. Hi, Mark. Hi, Alvaro. Thanks for hopping in. Thanks for the 2 likes. Make sure my Discord is up. Let me switch to the live broadcast channel. It sounds like you can hear me, even though it's probably better there. Oh, Mr. Certainly, you always got my back. Hi, Summersoft. All right, let me just reorder Windows. I did get started a little early, so I'll just fart around a bit on it. Hope everybody's good. How's everybody been? Adafruit's getting back on the streaming horse. Mr. Certainly says, we look good, going to stick on Twitch. Awesome. I really like this shirt. I think I've worn it maybe like half the times I've streamed. I think more people should wear pink when they stream. That's my opinion. And it's Pi Cascades, of course. It's like the last conference I'll probably actually physically attend for a while. Alvaro says audio is fine, and Marco Zamora says, "Hey, late lunch." Yeah, you must be in Pacific time if it's a late lunch. Nice. Mark is posting some PCB pictures in live broadcast chat. If you want to join the live broadcast chat channel, it's on Discord. You can go to adafru.it/discord. Discord lives all the time, so we're chatting there throughout the week, not just when we're streaming. And Mr. Certainly dropped a link, so thank you for that. Cyan Shaw of Awesome says stream. Indeedy. Mark says hi from Canada. Hi, Mark. Mark Comis, not Mark Olson. I'm a bit nervous about this stream, actually. I'm an object. Correct. Mr. Certainly asks, will you be doing Nina's stream or has that been postponed this week? It has been postponed. So I believe the plan is that I will be on Nina's stream next week. She's not streaming today. Thumbs up. Yeah, so we got all the time. So we'll probably do about 2 hours like we do normally. It won't be quite as short. Alvaro, Mark Comas says, I'm impressed you said my last name correct. Almost no one does. And then I'm like very nervous that I'm going to say it wrong. We're probably going to screw it up from now on. Alvaro says, today's going to be a short stream, right? Actually, no. It will be, I'll probably do about 2 hours. we'll see. We'll see how it goes, as always. But I am not doing the stream right afterwards, so I don't have a deadline. Sam J says hello from Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, thank you for checking me on that. I had actually forgotten about it because Nina and I had that conversation a few days ago. It was and also shout out to Thea, Stargirl. She offered to shift her week or change her week as well because she was scheduled to be on Nina's stream next week. So she at least was going to swap with me for some time. So. Awesome. Well, it's 2:01. We're going on Twitch and we're going on YouTube. So let's kick it off. Just, Mark, I would say just keep installing Python deps for it. The ones that it says it's missing. Or just use the install script, which does it all. Thanks, Cyan Shaw. Awesome. It says Adafruit is cool. Okay. Let me officially start the stream. Yeah, I never edit it though, right? So this just ends up in the middle. It just feels so official. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott. I work for Adafruit on CircuitPython. Adafruit, if you don't know, is an open source hardware and software company based out of New York. They pay me as a contractor. I'm a freelancer for them because I am located in Seattle. I started doing these streams. Generally, these streams are updates on the progress on the CircuitPython port of the ESP32-S2. As you'll see a little bit later, I think I'm going to deviate that, and I'll get into why. Deviate from that for today, and I'll get into that why a little bit later. So housekeeping, you can go to adafruit.com and purchase from them. They are shipping orders. Just be patient because they may not go out quite as quickly as they used to, but you can support Adafruit that way. Going to digikey.com and buying Adafruit stuff from there is also great. That indirectly supports me as well because they pay me. So that's great. The other thing, I should always give a heads up on the cat. For those of you who don't know, I do have a cat that is epileptic, and he does have seizures from time to time as he's asleep in the window. And so if that happens, you'll hear him hiss. I'll mute and then just watch him for like 5 minutes or however long however long he seizes. I just want to make sure he doesn't get like tangled up and stuff. As you know, it's happened on the stream before, so that's why I want to give a heads up. But he's usually fine. So that's that. And let me just say some shout outs to the folks who have dropped in. My neighbor just texted me. I'll have to get back to her later, unless she can hear me through the window. So yes, so it isn't I was going to say hi to people. So hi, Charles. Thanks for the deep dive. Marco Zamora says hi from Renton. Oh, you're so close to me. Shaw says hi, and that milk and cookies are yummy, which is definitely the case. No, I will not react to somebody else's videos. And Alvaro asks, what's on the menu for today? So, yeah, Mark's trying to debug the ESP32-S2 build stuff. And honestly, I haven't worked very much on that. And so my plan today is Hi, Emmett. This is a deep dive stream where I get into technical details about the stuff that I'm working on. Alvaro says, hi, neighbor, through the window. Yeah. My plan today is I want to cover the stuff that I did in the ESP32-S2 world. But as I will talk about after that I've been pretty distracted, and I want to tell you why I've been distracted and what I'm doing that's been distracting me. So before I get into that stuff, because I think that's a long conversation, and we'll get technical later too. I'm being a bit vague, but I understand that. So let me go to the browser, and there will be hints as well about what we'll be doing a little bit later. So first and foremost, I just want to show the latest commit to my ESP32-S2 bus.io branch. Where we left off last Friday was I spent an hour not listening to Mark Olson suggest a way to fix the I2C stuff so that it would work, so that we would be able to talk to a device. So that was great. We finally got it fixed once I listened and understood to what Mark was talking about. So I appreciate that. There's a commit in the repo for that. And then this week I wanted to revisit or go back to the I2C stuff. There was just a little bit left that we hadn't filled out yet. And so I found some focus and I took some time to do that. And my intent is also to get to the point of doing bus or like Spy and UART as well. Alvaro asks what Salo is recommended, the R or the M, and I can never remember which one has RAM, but one of them has extra RAM and one of them doesn't. So definitely pick up the one with the extra RAM. I just can never remember. Hey Shai, you're gonna have to stop asking me over and over. I'm not gonna react to your videos. Mark says it's the Rover, which is the R, has the added PSRAM. Okay, so I2C was working, and that was great. And one of the things that we had done, that was needed to be done, is I commented out the pull-up testing stuff. So I added support for that. So the first thing I did is I actually just straight up made pins 45 and 46 not work for I2C. And the reason that is because, well, I picked pin 45 for my Sala breakout board, which I think I did show, right? I did show the board I designed to adapt to a feather form factor. So I made this board here that you can see. I think I showed this. But the idea was to adapt from the Sala that are pretty available and to a feather footprint, which we don't have a feather that's like available yet. And I picked, I think, pin 0 and pin 45 for the I2C pins. And I quickly realized that if I had a stemma QT plugged in, I wasn't able to do the flash and reset. And the reason that is because, as Unexpected Maker had pointed out to me in the stream, those are strapping pins. And what that means is it's their term for pins that impact the way that the device boots up. And I had kind of like ignored that a bit, thinking, oh, right, like you can use them as regular pins once it's all booted up. But the problem is that if on I2C, as we've talked about, the bus is dependent on pull-ups, which means you put resistors between the high value and the bus wires, and that makes the state of those high. Now the problem is, and the reason that, if you can read this comment, you'll see why. But 45 and 46, I just said you can't use for I2C because they default to being pulled down. So by putting an I2C device on that pulls them up, you're actually changing the behavior of when you start up, which also causes it to like not work, which is frustrating. And so I thought that so that other people don't make that same mistake, what I'll do is I'll just disallow I2C on those two pins. So that's what this first thing does. And although you could technically do it in practice, because you're like assuming that you're putting the pull-ups on before you're starting the device up, you really don't want to do it. Again, you could do it if you want the behavior that pulling up those lines means, but I think the vast majority of people want them pulled down. So that was one thing I did. Another thing I did is we have this optional thing that should be actually mostly enabled, which is testing the SDA and SCL lines to try to determine whether there are pull-up values. And we do that by we pull the lines down for 10 microseconds, and then we detach our pull-up and we see we detach the pull down and we see what the value is after we do that. So we take a little while to let the hopeful pull-ups do it, and then we check the levels. So I added support for that, and I did some logging here. So I just removed that because I felt like it was working just fine now. I was even able to test, like, if I attach it, I just used 2 other pins for the I2C. I didn't use the ones that I'd actually like connected to the stemmic UT. And I was able to see that, like, if I disconnect it, like, and try to create the I2C object, it complains that the pull-ups are missing, which they were. So that was good. And then I just cleaned it up a bit by removing a lot of the logging. I did have some issues with probing, so I made the probe timeout a little lower as well. And then I also did hook into this, because in the pull-up checking, we're calling this delay microsecond. And I took a look at how we actually implement it, and we weren't implementing it in any sort of sane way. So I actually made it do a microsecond delay, ideally. So that's the state of the ESP32-S2 stuff. It's what I pushed, and I don't think I have anything locally. Yeah, I don't have any changes locally, so that's current up to date. Is there any other ESP32-S2 stuff that people want to ask or talk about? I'm kind of inverting the way that I've done other streams, where like the start is usually a recap, and then it's more ESP32-S2 stuff. But I know it takes a little while for people to see the video and respond and stuff, so I'll just wait here a little bit. Maybe I should reply to my neighbor. I will after the stream. Mark is typing. Alvaro is as well. Yeah, so Mark says, I found the bin on the S2 for the rover, but I forgot how to flash it. Oh, well, I'll find it out. Yeah, so if you look in the make file, you'll see the flash command, and you get snag the thing there. Anecdata says, is the latest I2C committed to the Adafruit repo yet? It is not. Found on S3. Yeah, the I2C stuff is only in mine. Marco Zamora says, just happy to watch and soak whatever is learnable. Good. Yeah, so we will get into more technical stuff. It's just not gonna be ESP related. Okay. Yeah, sorry, it's not on this. It's not on All right, let me switch back. I can answer more questions later, but you'll see in a moment. So this has been a crazy year and a crazy week and a crazy month. And I found this week personally very hard to focus on ESP work. And it kind of comes from, with the pandemic, I've wanted to contribute in some way. You've seen I do a lot of technical work, and I'm very much a believer in the power of technology to lift people up and make things more equal. And when the pandemic started, I got really into contact tracing and what that could mean for what that could mean with the Bluetooth work that I've done in CircuitPython. Like, how can I help with that sort of thing? Kind of like further on into the pandemic later, it was like seeing a lot of businesses really struggling because their business was gone. Like I like ordered out from a Thai place here in my neighborhood and like went in there and I kind of said to the guy, I was like, so how's it going? He's like, it's terrible. Right. So one thing I've spent a lot of time thinking about was, what is the intersection of technology and supporting people broadly? Like technology has the benefit that you can scale really well. But there is also usually this component of like data organizing it and community organization that Adafruit excels at and that CircuitPython's gone really well. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, like kind of waiting for a thing that I felt like was tractable and that could have an impact. So with that last week and George Floyd being murdered by police and the reactions of everyone after that really got me sucked in the same way like the first week of the pandemic, the first few weeks got me sucked into like social media and all that. So this week, Adafruit, we didn't do any posts or shows the last 2 days. I'm like the first live stream since that. I even like changed some of the titles and stuff away from the stream on Black Lives Matter that was on Wednesday. And I should also say that like obviously the opinions I'm saying here are mine and not Adafruit's necessarily. But I should say Black Lives Matter, and that is also the opinion of Adafruit. If you want to see resources for Black Lives Matter, you can't see my screen. Let me switch back to my screen. So adafruit.com/Black Lives Matter has a bunch of resources for those of folks who want to figure out how they can contribute and make the world a better place for everybody. So there's lots and lots and lots of resources here. I suggest that everybody go there and do that. For me personally, it's been kind of like a bit of this, like, how does technology play into this stuff as well? And one thing I came up with is this idea that technology is really good for joining. Like I said, it's good for scaling. So I've seen a lot of things like, I'm going to go away from this page. But I've seen a lot of things like this where people are aggregating information into spreadsheets about people who need help and support. This one in particular is 1,000+ Black producers, artists, and labels for BandCamp Day. BandCamp's doing this thing during the pandemic. They've been doing it a number of weeks where the first Friday of every month, they don't take any cut from the sales. They go all directly to the artists. And I see things like this, and I've seen similar things, like our farmers market in our neighborhood has a spreadsheet of like everybody's online store. And I've seen like things like this, and my first kind of idea of technology and joining these things was like, we don't need a spreadsheet for these things. We need an online shop that aggregates all of these data. So for in this example, like an online shop for all of these different bands in one place that's like the store of this type of people, right? Whether it's Black producers, artists, labels, or it's like vendors from the local farmers market. I think having a website that could aggregate that together, I think, is something that could be useful. But it's also really, really, and sorry for the noise, but the window's open as it usually is. One of the challenges with that is it's a lot of data, and to do it well, it would be very, very, very hard, I think, because you basically need to curate everything. So if I just, so I live in Ballard, and I also found that they had already kind of started to do this, where they have this Ballard Marketplace, and they have like all this like aggregation of items from other people. So I've been thinking a lot about it, and in fact, if you look, like I've like bought a bunch of domains that are around shopping nearby and stuff like that. But it didn't feel like it felt like there was a lot of activation energy, and I wasn't quite sure whether I could have the impact that I wanted with doing that. And the other thing I should say is that one thing I've tried to do when thinking about like how I personally can contribute to the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and all those things. Mark saw some chocolate on this page. Yep. Scandinavian specialties. My neighborhood's historically Scandinavian, so it's a thing. But what was I going to say? Oh, I've been trying to force myself to think locally when it comes to the impacts that I could have, because I think that's a way to ground yourself in reality. One thing that's really challenging as a tech person is this idea that you can build something but nobody comes. And I learned programming by making website after website that had no content and no users. And you realize that the technical side is not actually the hard part. It's everything else that's hard. Knowing whether people actually care about the thing you're doing and getting the content to make it valuable. So that is really something I've been thinking about a lot, is like grounding it locally. And I'm going to so the idea I came up with is I believe that in the US, not as many people vote as should. I think voting is a slow, long-term way to get reforms done and to get change to happen. And not only racial injustice in this country, but many of the problems I think are an artifact of the people who vote and the people who get elected. So, and the thing that frustrates me the most is when I see activities done by people to actually prevent voting or make it harder. So what I wanted to do, and this idea that I had and that I've been working on this week and I wanted to get technically into, is this idea of an election calendar. And the idea is that for wherever you are in the US, and if I know a lot of you folks are outside the US, so this could apply to any government that has like votes and deadlines associated with those votes or those elections. But the idea is that it's one website where you can go for the US that you can get any sort of feed or information about voting days and deadlines. So election days and deadlines. So there's a few of these sites that are like, make sure you register to vote, and how do you do that, and how do you check your registration? But I was thinking, like, why don't we just produce a calendar file? In the same way that we produce a calendar file for the CircuitPython weekly meetings, like, why don't we just publish a calendar file that once I tell you what county I live in, like, and then I just add it to my calendar and it notifies me when the registration deadline happens, when the deadline for, not in Washington here, but in other country or counties or states, like registering for mail-in ballots, which is going to be incredibly important in a pandemic. And more states are having the ability for anyone to get a mail-in ballot. I wanted to make sure that people knew when those deadlines were and didn't miss them and got reminded of them. so that they could vote in all of the upcoming elections. Hopefully that makes sense because I've been kind of heads down on it the last few days. Okay, so let's close this. Again, adafruit.com/Black Lives Matter has a ton of resources around race in particular, and they are much better resources than I am, which is part of the reason I think that this broader advocacy for voting is something that I feel that I can contribute to. So yeah, I have this electioncalendar.us. I don't actually know if this page works anymore. Yeah, it doesn't. So I got electioncalendar.us, and now it's actually electioncal.us because I actually snagged the Twitter account, and Twitter has a 15-character limit. So on Twitter, it'll be electioncal_us. And basically, the idea is that we have one open source for deadlines and dates related to elections throughout the US. And then that data can then be used to generate calendar files and RSS feeds and images that go on social previews for the link sharing, for tweeting out dates and deadlines for people. So the first thing I did when I was doing that was kind of thinking about or looking for resources that had already done it. So this is what I was planning on talking about today is voting. So I hope that's okay. I do want to keep it technical. I want to try not to be too political. I don't think human rights are political. And voting, it shouldn't be political either. So the first thing I did when I thought of this idea is technology makes it really easy. Let's see what other people are doing and who has that data and do they publish it. And so Voteorg is one of the major organizations within the US that has these calls to action. And I like this countdown to election day. But this is also this is like a federal thing. So Alvaro says, sounds like a good idea to have a calendar. Also have in simple terms the prerequisites. Like, what would you use to code something like this? Yeah, Python, but with what? So static sites are really easy to host. And in fact, GitHub will host static sites for you. And that includes with custom domains. So the general tech architecture, so to speak, is Python files that run in GitHub Actions that produces the website and all of the derivative stuff. And it could also do the tweets and things like that. So yeah, it's Python, and then I'm storing the original data, and we can go into this in a bit. I'm storing the source data in .toml files because I have the goal of it being hand editable. So if y'all want to contribute, you can go on the GitHub page for ElectionCal, and you can edit and make sure that all the dates are right, and that the registration deadlines, I think, are going to be the harder part. I think I actually have most of the actual elections, although I did find some errors when I was looking at that as well. Mr. Certainly says, this is a nice tool idea. I have a few friends who are extremely passionate about voting, and even they acknowledge how frustrating it is to keep track of all the elections they're eligible to vote for. Yeah. Mark says, I'm always amazed at how many voting dates the US has compared to us here in Canada. Yeah, so one of the things I'm going to produce is I will produce a calendar that has all of the voting dates across all of the states. I think so. I'm still learning a lot about how the structure of voting works across the US, but I think the general idea is that the federal government, so the United States is made up of 50 states plus some territories. And the idea is that the federal government doesn't really run the elections at all. The elections are either run at the state level or they're actually run at the county level. So, yeah. Alvaro says, would you publish also with an API or something similar? So I think, says, would love to make a PyPortal version of it. So we have a weekly meeting for Adafruit folks internally on Wednesdays, and actually that came up. And that's part of why I was okay to work on it during work time, is that Phil was he just said, like, we should make a PyPortal project for this. So yeah, if you have ideas about what the format should be, let me know. My plan is to I think I'll do CSV, RSS, iCal, JSON probably, of just a list of, yeah. Yeah. So if you have an idea about what format you'd like, let me know. But my goal is to actually like it's all static. It's all going to be statically served. I'm not planning on, yeah. JSON should be fine. I think CSV will actually be more compact, but we can talk about that. Like I've got most of this done, at least the first pass. So let's keep talking through it. You're jumping to the end game, which is great. But I want to talk about like how do you actually get it done, and what the options are. So Vote.org has this nice countdown, and I like this idea of a countdown. And this is kind of the countdown I would expect on the front page. But I also want to drill down to state and county level, because it doesn't matter when you can vote if you're not registered to vote. Or yeah, I'm using Jinja to do templating right now. They offer to get election reminders, and they have you give them all your information, including your address, and then they'll email you and stuff. Hey, TwitchBot, thanks for dropping in. You're only 37 minutes late or something. Yeah, Quirky asks, will it have voting dates for local officials? That probably has far more immediate local effect for people. Yes, my hope is yes. So, y'all are getting ahead of me. It's great. So Vote.org is national stuff. They have a mention of the census, which is nice. And then they have state level stuff. And then you can go to the state level. They don't have a countdown anymore. They still do have like their generic like check registration. You still give them all your information, and they say you will receive emails that you can unsubscribe to, and if you give them your phone number, you can reply to unsubscribed as well, which I was like, okay, that's no thank you. Like, why can't you just tell me how to check myself? Is the way that I want to take it off. And then these sites have a lot of them have these COVID-19 updates as well about like when things have changed. And then they have deadlines. But these deadlines are relative to election days. They are not necessarily like actual dates, right? Great. Mark got the CircuitPython stuff building. There's lots of really good information here, but I'm trying to my goal is to hit be date driven, right? They've done studies about if you've ever done homework, right? Like you may have something due in a week and you don't do it till the night before, right? So, my goal is kind of to give you those deadlines, and make those available so that you kind of know. So lots of good resources, here, and there's a number of other spots, but they kind of all have this thing of they're not quite how I would do it. And COVID stuff is kind of separate. So the first thing I thought about was, how would I make a web-friendly... Oh, giving it away. Where did it go? Here we go. I'll just show you all the stuff. So one thing I wanted to do, and I found this really cool thing, is on your phone, like most people will visit it on your phone, right? You can see me. How you select your state and your county on your phone is actually really important and most sites will just do a big long like scrolling list that is just not fun to use. You can also tap it and keyboard as well. But what I was thinking would be cool, and I haven't done any of this work, but I found this example where, and it works on mobile, you can just click your state and it zooms into your state, and now you also have county boundaries. This example just zooms back out, but you can imagine this would be like a really quick kind of hierarchical way of selecting the county that you're in and getting to the webpage that's for your county. So that's the like UI side of it, and that's the side that needs the most help. So if you're a UI person, please reach out to me. As I was doing the data search, I found two places that were really interesting to me. These are both federal sites for the US. One is the Federal Election Commission, and their primary role is campaign finance tracking. So most of what the FEC does is all about researching into donations into candidates for different things. Like you can see here, who is raising and spending the most money, which is not quite what I'm going for. But I did notice that they have this open FEC API, which is neat. So they've got a really good API. And one of the things that they have in the API is they have like candidates and committees, which I don't care about. But they also have dates. And these dates do include like reporting deadlines, like candidate level dates that I don't care about. But it also includes, oh, I should open that. It's under there. It also includes election dates, which is the part that I'm most interested in. So there's like calendar dates, which is everything, and then there's election dates, which is the thing that I find really helpful, right? This is exactly the data that I need to like start to build these calendars out. So I scraped this. Well, I didn't scrape it. I got an API key. Let me pull up the GitHub. So the GitHub is github.com/electioncalendar/US. All right, Shaw, I'm gonna time you out. Like totally random discussion. If you want to chat in off topic on Adafruit, go ahead, but this stream is a bit more focused than that. So I have this scripts directory, and I have these two basically scraping things. One's from the FEC, and this is a really good source. It's like 115 elections that they have in this data set. And I basically like, if you've ever seen me do Python, like it's just very like ground up, minimal, like just the things that I really need to do. So it's literally like 60 lines of code, including some of these nasty hacks where this data set is actually, the election data set kind of like globally is actually quite tricky right now because a lot of those dates are moving as states account for the fact that like people should not be near each other due to the pandemic. So I have a couple of hacks here that are due to election dates changing. So this is one just API call that I'm doing. It's just 2 pages worth of data. And I basically decided to slurp that into the repository as kind of like a raw data source. So the general structure. Geodata is that the data that was used for that drawing, and some other stuff like figuring out how many states are there, what counties are in those states. If you want to see where I got that data, I had this sources thing. It's all from the U.S. government, which means it's public domain, which is great for licensing. So I snagged some of those files and just dumped them here. Yeah, Simon says, I think the concept you have is cool for your voting calendar. In the UK, our voting happens all in one day. It can be local and central government at the same time. Yeah, so it's true as well in the US that local and federal level stuff can be on the same ballot. But I would encourage you to think about other related dates. So like, I don't know the UK system, but like in the US, like not only is there an election, but there's also like a deadline for you to register, and like there's a deadline for how you get, like there's deadlines that are related to your ability to vote on the actual vote day. That would be good for people to do too. DCD points out the Real Python podcast for using Python for scraping. Yeah, I actually downloaded that and I've been meaning to listen to it because I was doing this work. Okay, so this is like figuring out states and counties. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to actually organize the repository based on states and counties. So here under U.S. states, there's a list of all the states, and it also includes territories because they have different administration of elections. So the one weirdest one is actually District of Columbia because they don't have a county, which is weird. So so I live in Washington, for those of you who don't know, and I'm in King County. So like for here, I just have a info.toml file. Toml is kind of like YAML, except it's better defined. So here we have just the county name and the FIPS code, which is like a code that some agency, like U.S. government agencies, use as like a common identifier. And then if we look back at the state level, there's also this info toml. It has the FIPS code for the state, which is actually a prefix of the county's code. And I also put postal codes in here because basically what I was doing is I was taking the FEC data and trying to like take its one feed of elections and like spit it all out to the different places or the different files that have it. And where did my tab go? So let's look at elections raw here. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm taking that like little JSON object that I got from, in this case, the FEC, and I'm spitting it out in a TOML file. And the way that TOML works is that this is like a key in a dictionary and then a key underneath that dictionary as well. So I'm using the election date as the identifier. And remember, they're split across like national, like federal, state, and county levels. I don't have any county level elections yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. So from the FEC, I'm getting like when it was created, the raw, like these are all raw, like straight up fields from their data set. And then the idea is that like we can either by hand use that data to supplement the like truth, the ground truth, or we can ignore it. So the other source I found is the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, which is actually like a government commission tasked with this very similar goal. Let's just go to the top level. Again, they have this very similar, like how many weeks, like what is the countdown to the general election. For those of you who don't know, that's the election where we will vote for the president of the United States for the next 4 years, which is looking to be the two front runners will be Donald Trump, the incumbent, and Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee of the other leading party in the U.S. There's also a lot of other candidates as well, but those are the two that people would expect are contenders. So that's why the general election is important. But there's a lot of smaller elections that lead up to that, or occur before then, that people should know about as well. So this is a pretty cool website. They have this election calendar thing. So you can click that, and this is what I was kind of talking about. It defaults to Alabama, but they have two pieces of information. They have the name of the election, the registration deadline, which is new information compared to the FEC, and the election day, which is interesting. And then they also have the general election here, along with the registration deadline. And as far as I can tell, this data is actually like hands maintained. You can see here that like, oh, here's the last time we changed it. If you find a bug, email us, which I actually did. So I've emailed them and I haven't heard anything back, which I kind of like to do also to just see how responsive they are. So yeah, and it is interesting because it doesn't include presidential caucuses or party-run primaries. So what happens prior to a presidential election in the U.S. is that like we have two major parties. We have the Democratic and Republican parties, and typically they decide amongst themselves who their candidate will be, and then this is why we basically have two that are kind of like the assumed like contenders for the election. And there's every state's like division of those political parties has different ways that they decide which candidate will be the representative for their party. And in some states that primary process is run by the state itself. And in others, it's actually run by the party itself. So this is what they're saying is that like if the party runs it, if it's not a like federally run election or a state level run election, like we don't have that data, which I think is a distinction that I will make as well, because I was debating whether party data, like how the parties organize themselves, should leak or be present in these calendars that I'm talking about. Because I want to make sure that the website itself is not political in the sense of having opinions about who you should vote for or what party you should vote for. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. So yeah, this is a very cool data set because they are starting to provide more data than what I got from the other source. And the other thing is that they also have links to the state election office website and a place for folks in that state to vote. So I wanted to scrape this data as well. Unfortunately, they don't have an API. I looked, I couldn't find one. But if you go into developer and you look at the network, and you change your state. So like I live in Washington. You can get the info. It does do an AJAX request. Unfortunately, that AJAX request is quite gross in the sense that it's not like just a like a JSON request and response. It's all this Drupal stuff. It's like a form and this like random number, the 919 here, the field state target ID is some like random identifier for what state it is. And the response here is actually like, it's not JSON all the way down. It turns out that there's like a JSON field that stores a bunch of HTML that basically gets like patched in. So if we go back to this scripts directory and we look at this update from EAC, you'll see that like I'm doing similar requests. I'm using the Parse library in Python, which is a cool library because you give it, it's not regex. It basically creates regex out of a string format, like a standard string format form of Python, which is cool. So if you've ever done like string dot format something. Like you already know what the format is, which is super, super nice. So that's what this is doing. And then I'm looping through all of the state IDs that I pull out of the page. And I've got some hacks because there's a couple dates that actually include, like, there's one that has like paragraph or p tags around it, so it doesn't parse straight away. And there's another one that has a span around it as well. So like clearly there's like a Drupal backend that they're like hand editing these dates in, which is interesting. And it goes to show why I think like Election Cal can be a resource for like machine readable as well as human readable source for the data. Simon says, in the UK, we have an electoral roll, and every voting age adult 18 years must register every October. So you register every year. I think in our case, we don't have to register every year, but there are periodic like purges of the rolls of people who like may have passed away or may have moved out of the state, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that makes it more complicated. Is it sounds like all of the UK stuff is administered at the like country level, whereas all of our elections are run like at lower levels than countrywide. Okay, so this is the other source for stuff, and it's spitting it out to TOML, and so in this raw file you can see that there's also EAC sources, and they actually have more dates than the FEC does. Alvaro says, in Costa Rica, everyone gets an ID at 18, and that is auto-register for voting as well. No one re-registers. Yeah, see? I think what you'll find is that the way that voting works in the US varies a lot. There are places where you do get auto-registered, I think. And there's places where registration takes like multiple forms of ID and stuff that is just... It's very inconsistent across all the states. Yeah. Costa Rica has 2 dates, one for president and one municipal, which would be the not to scale version of a state. So every new voter registers in October in the UK. Yeah, so it varies a lot in the US. And the state that I live in, Washington, is actually one of the more progressive when it comes to voting, because I think there are 6 states in the US that everyone votes by mail, which I think for most people is the most convenient. And in Washington in particular, it doesn't actually require postage as well. So every registered voter gets mailed their ballot, and they can mail it back without paying postage. There is some accessibility issues with that, but generally I think that's one of the more accessible ways of voting. I don't remember what the registration process is, but I think it's also pretty simple. I'll learn that. Okay, so the EAC was a really good find because we found more data about other primary elections that the FEC didn't have data on, or may have had data on. Like you can see here that there's 2 versions of the primary election here. And the EAC is also great in that they have notes about how early voting works. And this is kind of just free form. So one of the things that I'll have to come up with over time is like, how does this data like impact the notifications and things that people get about dates and the information that we provide them. So yeah, let's see, what other tabs do I have here? So this is the current state of the live site. But what I was working on yesterday was getting the actual. I first got the terrible looking structure of the site. So I have Ginger open, and do I have the? I have a like local version of the static site. Here we go. This is what I'm doing. So this is my like handwritten HTML version. Oh yeah, nice. Alvaro says happy to translate to Spanish. Yeah, that is something I definitely want to do. I definitely want to have as many languages supported as possible. The only page that doesn't have the language code in the URL is this one. So this is my terrible front page, but it has a list of all of the states, and you can click a state, and while it's not going to index.html because it's not being served by a server, but that would be this is what you would click to. And so it's got the state level dates here, which is kind of just to show that we have that data. I don't think we want to show all the dates, but we want to show like the next date and how long until that date happens. And then you can click the county you're in and get another date here, or another page. And then it also has this add all of the dates to your calendar by clicking here, which is a webcal link that won't work right now. But I've started generating it. And if we just look, oh, it tried to import it. Can I just, I can open it and let's see what the chat's saying here. We're learning more voting systems. Mark says the UK has a crazy counting system, but I actually like it. In Sweden, it's 3 votes every 5 years. Riksdag is the central government. I don't know if that's an I or an L. Lands is county, and commune is district level. Swedish citizens can vote for all 3. Residents but non-citizens can just vote for the local level. Which is interesting. Then there is the EU elections. Simon says the registration is based on your address. If you move, you have to re-register at your new address. That makes sense. Simon says no EU election for us now. Yep, UK is not part of the EU anymore. So yeah, if you're interested in doing this for other countries, that'd be super cool. Which is kind of why like I have that structure of like there's an organization and that you pronounced it pretty much perfectly. I sing in choir, so I have done some Swedish. But yeah. Okay, so the point that I'm at is that I'm starting to generate calendar files, and I'm starting to think about like what data should actually go in the calendar files, and how do I decide like what the title is and what the description is and all that sort of stuff. And then once I do that, the last step is hooking up all of the GitHub Actions machinery. So maybe I'll just do that now. I think I could do that. The other thing I could do is I haven't seen Johnny pop up yet, and I told him I would do a release this week, but I've been very distracted. I think we are ready to do a CircuitPython release, but I think I might just do that. Ask, should I integrate it with Weblate or by hand would be okay? Yeah, I think I want to do WebLate because WebLate's been working really well for CircuitPython. Jeff did that and it's been really good. I just don't know. I don't actually know what the strings are going to be at this point. Um, it's so early that I don't know, like, what will the blurb for like a particular county level election like reminder be. Um, I just don't think I'm not quite there yet. Um, like I also have a lot of thoughts about like auto generating images and things like that, so that when you know how like on Discord you share a link and then the like image pops up, like I want to make sure that that image is like useful, and then links back to the site so people, or I guess there's a link alongside it, but um, I want to make sure it's useful. So I think once we have strings to translate, we'll definitely do WebLate because it's worked really well. For now, I think we are just so early. Um, I think the biggest thing is actually like uh, making it not look terrible. Um, I think that a lot of people, when they're starting a new project, they have this intuition or this idea that they can't share what they're doing if it's too early, if it's too ugly. And I definitely like felt that the last couple days because it's early and ugly. Uh, but I think that it's an interesting reason to think that that is the case, because the reality for almost everything is like it's not going to blow up until it's ready. And by sharing early and often, you're going to find the people that see the beauty through the ugliness and can help you make it better. And then, yeah. Ah. Um, Alvaro says, I could also help with adding a Tor version of the site. So if you visit the normal URL with a Tor browser, it will hint to the Onion URL. That would be cool. I just don't know. Right. I want this to be as accessible as possible. So that would be cool. I just don't know how that works in terms of hosting, because I am hosting it on GitHub. Like it's just GitHub pages. So there'll be actually like a separate branch in the repository that just has all the generated files. Because I'm not going to use Jekyll, which is what GitHub uses to generate their static stuff. Which I think was actually going to be a benefit. Will I actually be able to see the history of the generated files, which I think will be cool. But yeah, open to that. It's about accessibility and like thinking about all the different ways that people get their information. So like I talked about, like I registered the Twitter account so that like the GitHub action, when we're running it once per hour, can like tweet out like we have a notion of like when we want to remind people for particular deadlines and how we remind them. Like we should find all the places that people are watching and do it that way. Like we could even generate like YouTube videos and things like that, which I think would be interesting. Or maybe we record ones. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways this could go, and I want to get the core up and I want to get more people involved, and then hopefully that will allow my brain some space to like get back to ESP32-S2. But I've given up on it for today. I'm just not going to get there. But yeah, I think we'll probably also see a PyPortal project come out of this once it's actually live and hosted. I think more generally support for like displaying a calendar on a PyPortal makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's go into some details of... Do I want to do the calendar stuff? So this is iCalendar.org, and it has references for the specification. I was also... I don't think I need that. I'll close this. This is the Toml reference, and it's really handy. But I don't think we need that. I love this animation. So if you do like HTML, that would be cool. Being able to have that selector on the front page. let's see, what do I have? Looks like I have it open here. Okay, so this is interesting because I actually have, so there's 3 tiers, right? There's like federal, state, and county level stuff. And only at the county level do I only want to have one calendar feed. At the higher levels, I want to also have feeds that basically aggregate everything. So, yeah, sorry, Mark. Mark says I made sure my solid baseboard worked before the stream to follow along on ESP stuff, but we're not doing ESP stuff today. This is all part of the process to like kick off something that I'm excited about and get it out of my brain and into bits. And then like hopefully like after a weekend, I'll be able to like focus again next week. But I think the danger for a lot of the protests and anger that people have had in the US is the danger is that it wanes and people kind of like forget about it. So I think it's important to think about the things that you can do that have a long-term impact and a long-term commitment. And if I convince a bunch of people to add calendar files to their calendar, I'm kind of committed to like keep those up and keep those accurate and keep those up to date. So I think that in the longer term, the goal is that like this site would kind of require like minimal maintenance and run on its own. And it could also be shared amongst a bunch of people. So, so for all but the lowest level, I want to have aggregate calendars as well. So personally, I think what I'll do is I'll subscribe to the aggregate one, which has like a notice for the federal election and then all the primary elections or whatever elections in all of the states forever and all of the deadlines. Mark says, I'm totally for this new project, though. I think voting is really important, and I like the idea. Yes. I'm actually kind of surprised that no Australians have chimed in yet. Because in Australia, it's compulsory, meaning they get fined if they don't vote. But we must not have the Australians on the stream today. So this is the calendar that I really want to subscribe to, and it's not quite helpful enough. One, there's this bug where the HTML version of ampersand is getting passed all the way through. But it's also not very useful to just see that like there is a presidential primary on June 9th. What I'd really like to see is the state. So state presidential primary. So maybe I'll just add that, and then we could get the GitHub Action stuff going too. What are people interested in seeing? And if it really is CircuitPython stuff, we could do the release, but this is kind of where my brain's at. I definitely I want to get this ugly version of the site up and running because the URLs should stay the same. So this ugly version. Like, I want to find a designer that sees this and is like, I know how I can make that better. Make it pretty, brand it, all that stuff. All the stuff that doesn't come naturally to me. All right, well, let's do some hacking here. And so the way I have the generation broke down is there's this build site thing, and it's loading both the templates, and it uses this import election, which is a module that reads all the TOML files and basically generates dates. So this is the process I think that is like core to like aggregating it all. And one thing I was thinking about is like how to handle like reminders. So like if there's a deadline for a registration date and it requires you to mail something in, like the reminder should be X days before that or a week before that. Whereas like if it's something that like you could remind somebody 2 hours before and they have enough time to do it, like if it's an online registration, Like that should be captured here. But in terms of iCal files, it looks like the way the reminders work is you have like the event, and then you have like sub data for every event that's a reminder. Whereas if it was like an RSS feed, which I know like I follow lots of RSS feeds, and I know Phil and Lamar do as well. Like the RSS feed, like there's no concept of a reminder. It's really like we need some separate text that goes in as a reminder, at that duration difference, or maybe even like that duration difference plus some like wiggle room, because like RSS readers like fetch at different rates. So yeah, that is like figuring out how to go from these like abstract toml files and like data around that has been interesting. So right now I'm kind of just like dumping it all into a list, and I'm thinking of it like the CSV version of everything. So it's like you produce one list of all the events, and then you also include data about like what state or county it is relevant to, and so like each of the individual feeds can then like filter things out. So if we look at the build site.py, we see we're iterating through all the states, and we're just doing it simply by looking at the directories. So like the lowercase version of state and county is kind of like our identifier. And then we can say all state dates is everything where the state is none or the state is included to that state. So that's like I'm in Washington. If the date is for Oregon, I don't care. But I also want the federal dates, which have state as none. And then we do basically the same thing for county. And I have the separate ICS module. And the idea, I think, with this structure is that for every sort of artifact type that I want to do, I basically call like a generate function that says, okay, generate the ICS, generate the XML, like the RSS, generate the CSV, generate all that stuff from this kind of like top level like source for everything. But the problem with the way that I'm doing it right now is that I'm not passing the actual data about the state and the county in. So if I wanted to take like the name of the election that was specific to a particular state and like prepend, so it said like Washington primary election or Washington presidential primary or something, like I don't actually have that Washington piece right now. So now that I'm thinking about it, let's just do that. So I'm going to say for this ICS stuff, there's name and description, which I'm going to have to add. But I think I'll also say state and county as well. Although what's interesting about that is that I actually want to do the reverse. I actually want to provide it with an index of all the states and all the counties, because if I'm going through a list of all of the events, and it's the list for this like global calendar, like I'm going to need data about all of the different states. In order to like decide what to do. Mark says that's my kind of thing, the design stuff. We'll have a think. Awesome. Yeah, I like your PCB designs. They're nice. Okay. I looked at the current viewer count and it went down. Oh well. So yeah, this is kind of like a software engineering question, right? Like how much of this title preprocessing do we do and at what point? Alvaro says, "Do you have any info on how do you vote when you're out of the country?" I know a lot of folks here go to vote to the embassy, so maybe clarifying that would be useful. Yeah, I ran into that with the EAC website, I think, when I was... it's basically... It varies. But this site, I think one of the options was military and overseas. Yeah, military and overseas. And they basically say, like, you're allowed to vote, but it's complicated. So go to this. It's the Federal Voting Assistance Program. And there's designated officials at every state. So yeah, that's something I should definitely take into account. Let's see. And let's actually see. Let's see how much information they have at a state level. That's pretty nice. Like, they just link out to online tools, federal election deadlines. That's pretty good. See, this is something I could scrape as well, is these deadlines, and I could compare those deadlines to the other deadlines. And they actually have times as well, which is a whole nother rabbit hole I went down. Times, by the way. And actually, that reminds me. Well, yeah, it's another rabbit hole I went down, because I would like to. In some places, the way that you vote is you have to go to a place and vote physically, and there's times that those places are open. Even in Washington here, there's ballot drop-off boxes that close at 8 p.m. And if you have like one calendar to rule them all, if you have one calendar to rule them all, and you have times, like, all those things are happening in different time zones. And so I started going down that. Yeah, DC gets where I'm going, which is some states have multiple time zones to deal with and more challenges. Yes, and in fact, I couldn't find anything definitive to say time zones are based on county either. So they're not actually per county. So I went down this rabbit hole, and one of the weird things is the state of Arizona does not do daylight savings time, except for the Navajo Nation, which is a Native American reservation that is also a county in Arizona. They do follow it. And so I was like curious, so I went on the Navajo Nation's site for election information, and I noticed there that or was it that one, or I think Illinois is weird too. Like, Illinois has multiple time zones in the same state. And like, there's a whole history of Illinois time zones on Wikipedia because it's changed. But I found one website where it was just like, these are in local time. So like, if it's a polling place and it's 6 to 6, it's like whatever time zone that polling place is in. So it's complicated. I think that basically I'll fudge it when it comes to like, if you're getting a calendar for a county, then all of those times should be local, for whatever local means, right? So I was looking at this iCal. You can provide time zones or you cannot, and time zoneless stuff basically floats, meaning like the person, Indiana, not Illinois. Thank you. Indiana is the one with all the time zones. Yeah, I was off by one, right? So yeah, you can have a time on your calendar that's floating, which basically means that, like, regardless of what your calendar is set to, like, it's always that time on your calendar, which is fine at the county level, because like, even if you're in a county that has two time zones, like, presumably your calendar is in the time zone that you care about. But it gets trickier when you're like talking more like state level. Like I want to figure out when the polling places close across like a whole state that's like 2 time zones. You can either like try to be smart about like which county it is, and like if most of the county is 1 time zone, then like just set it there and there. I think that's what I'll do. And that's kind of like the approach I was thinking I would take for national as well. So like for this all encompassing calendar, when we start to put times on it, which the content I have right now is only dates, so it doesn't matter. But the when I start adding times, like I'll have to like basically generalize, otherwise it won't look right. Like I'll have to put some dates in there. Yeah, so I'm starting to learn all about iCalendar. And I still haven't decided how I'm going to add the state name to the front of stuff. But I could just pass it in. I could even make it a class. Maybe that's what I want to do. So here. Yeah, so I think I decided that I didn't want this part to worry about figuring out registration dates. So there's something about like registration dates have usually like a lead time. So like 25 days before the election. And that's some of the data that you'll find, but they can always override that. So I think we need this kind of way of like, by default, it's 25 days before the election. But if we like have one in the data, it should just override that policy. I think that should all be sorted out before we ever start talking about it being generated. But it's not super clear to me whether what we pass into this thing that generates an iCal file should worry about like structuring titles and stuff. Probably not, actually. Like, so imagine that like you're generating the calendar that's all of the like all of the election dates for the whole world, for the whole nation, like all of the different forms of that. Yeah, Rob points out Alaska might be hard, multiple time zones with all the little islands. Are the islands in the same county in different time zones? And then Charles says, how about a cookie crumb list? What do you mean by cookie crumb list? I know cookie crumbs in the sense of like when you're on a site, like as you get down narrower, that would make sense just on the pages that I'm rendering. I also want to put like an language selector. It would be nice. And then there's, the other thing I was thinking about that I haven't decided is that you can have unique IDs for events and calendars. And at least the calendar one I saw, like it's really should just be random. Because you may not want to, like it's a public thing. But you basically like, if people don't subscribe to it in the sense of like their calendar client fetches it and gets a new version, like if they don't do that, if they like download the file and they inject it in or bring it in, like you want to make sure that like ideally if they import it twice, that like it gets rectified against the second version gets rectified by the first. Breadcrumbs. Are you talking about like breadcrumbs on the website? Like to go up a tier or down a tier? Yeah. Right. Rob is saying, I don't know if they have different voting places, but they do cross multiple time zones. If you think about it, it's very high north. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, geography, like I used to work on Google Maps, and like it's amazing the corner cases you can find with geography and politics. and governments. Like, I spent a lot of time when I was at Google working on road shields. Like, if you've ever looked at the map and you see like in the US, like the interstate logo or the like state logo or things like that, it's the weeds. If we want to talk about geographic weeds, let's see if we can find this. So a guy I worked with, his name was Marcel, and he actually had a public site that he maintained for road shields. I think Monterey is his last name. Road numbering systems. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. If you want to talk about geographic weeds, this is fascinating. So this was kind of our canonical source for like what shield we would show on the map. And the one that was the most complicated was Spain. Typically, or the way that I wanted to think about like how we structure the road network, it has to do with like how big is the road, how can you access it, and like that would impact like was it white or yellow or green, or not green, orange on the map. And like ideally that also matches up with like the numbering system or like the shielding system, like what color it is. But in the case of Spain in particular, it was like not that way. I'm definitely in the weeds here, but it's fine. So yeah, for Spain, you could see that like here's the road class, here's the syntax of the numbering, and details here. And he goes into like pictures and talking about what colors they are, whether there's a dash or no dash. This was just like my go-to resource for it. So it's fascinating if you're curious about that. Yeah, Alvaro says Null Island is a nice place. Yeah. Okay, I'm getting distracted. What do we think we should do? That calendar is really not useful. I think what I need to do is I need to split this build site up. Because right now, I'm doing 2 steps when I could only be doing 1. I'm loading all of the state and county info, and I'm generating the stuff at the same time. So if I ever want to generate something that uses all the state information, which maybe you want to drop down per state so you can swap to a different state, for example. Like I should split this loop up into 2 things. One that loads everything in, and then another thing that generates stuff. So let's do that. That'll be helpful. So I'm literally just going to copy the loop and do it a second time. And then I'm basically going to delete the parts that I didn't want to do in the first time. So here, I'm going to say for state in states. And I also want it, so my thinking is that I will have a dictionary. I love the built-in types of Python. You'll find me like, I'm totally happy to make like lists of dictionaries and dictionaries of lists and vice versa and nested and all that stuff. It's one of the reasons I love Python is that it's very easy to go. And in fact, look, we have a list of states already. My phone is blown up. So I'm actually, I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to make it a dictionary, and then I will also make a counties dictionary under that. So basically that's how we can do our lookup. Yeah, that should be fine. And our key will be the lowercase version of it. And then if I'm just thinking about that, I also wanted to do, let's do state list. Just while we're here. States of X for X in states. That's equivalent to like iter values, right? Can I just do states.iter values? I think that's what it is. Or it might just be values. I think iter is a thing that came from iter is a thing that Python 2 had. I think they got rid of it. DCD says, I guess you don't need to worry about order that a list might preserve when you switch to a dictionary. No, not until I sort it. I think because the last thing I'm doing is I'm generating the index page. Like this state list needs to be sorted just so that the list on the web page is sorted. So I will need like, and that's going to be true for counties as well. That's passed in here. We'll want a sorted version of that. I mean, technically, Python 3.6 or something like dictionaries preserve insertion order. So we could potentially rely on order, but I don't think I will. Yeah, Charles says you're making a monster data structure. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. My wife is in data science, and we were talking about this a bit last night. And she was like, so are you putting it in Postgres or whatever? And I'm like, no, it's a bunch of folders with TOML files in it. And I think she was just like, so we'll see how it works. Rob says there are multiple states that have multiple time zones. Looks like 10 or so. Yeah, I'm going to kick the time zone can down the road. Yeah, not going to do that yet. I was just trying to think of like, what is the minimal set of stuff that we need to get going? And I think it's like, the pitch is iCalendar files. So we need iCalendar files, and then we need them to work long term, like those links to work long term. So make sure that like the link structure is what we want. And like I'm putting en in the links, even though like I only support English right now, which is another thing to talk about. Yeah, you can do a scraper and grab the times in country and county. Yeah, we'll get there. Okay, let's keep doing this. This will be my task for the next 25 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. And again, if folks want to help out, I love help. Oh, Corky says dictionaries are deterministic from 3.3, I think. Yeah, Python's a great tool for scraping sites and text manipulation in particular. Okay. So let's do the first part of this loop. So in states, we're going to say states is FN. It's a terrible name. And we're not going to do this all dates thing right now. We're going to wait on that. And now we're going to load all the counties. So we do need the state directory. We're going to load the county directory. And we're not going to generate stuff. This is generating stuff. And we don't need to make the directories yet either. And then We're not going to do any of this generation yet. And remember, we have a second copy of the list or the loop, so we're not losing anything. So here we're going to do the same thing and do counties of county fn is equal to the county info. This TOML-kit library is interesting. There's also a TOML Python library, but it doesn't preserve comments or formatting. And so I'm using TOML-kit because it can do that round trip better, which is neat. I know fn is a terrible variable name. I start with it for file name. It's just short. Short is the enemy of good programming, let me tell you. Like, you should really write it out, but this is me in like just get it written mode. So it's, yeah, I use F for, I use F for the file. So if you see here, like with open fn as F, I use F for the file, not for the file name. Because I want the file name after I've opened the file. So I can't like overwrite it. But yeah, it's not a good policy. And then in this case, the file names that I'm getting are also equivalent to like the lowercase version of the county or the state. So that's particularly bad because I'm like storing the file name back as the lower name. Okie doke. So now we're going to do this again. So now we have the state's dictionary proper. So state here is actually going to be state lower. Let's just call it lower. So maybe a comment then. Oh, silly DCD thinking I comment my code. I'm so bad about it. All right, I'll add a comment. File name, which is also the lowercase version of the city, state or county name. One thing is that I did actually find a data set that is includes all of the cities in a county, which is cool. So like theoretically we could add like one final tier. I'm not going to shorten variables I've already written. That's particularly bad policy. Okay. Counties. Oh, so I'm not actually attaching counties to anything here either. So if I tried to run it, that would not work. So I also would need state info of counties equals counties. Because I'm not going to have a separate data structure for counties. I'll just have it be part of this states thing. So we don't need to load it. We already loaded it. And if... Okay, so here we have a case that like fn is here. So let's state lower. And again, we're not loading. So I'm also going to do state. I guess I should be state info to be consistent. State lower. Quirky says, wouldn't it be simpler if you get all files of pathlib.path and then glob and then filter is required? And and then also Summersoft in Discord along the same vein says, I need to work on converting you to pathlib like I was. It's so much cleaner. Yeah, you're probably both right. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah, I mean, no need for exist checks either. But that's where you're wrong, because I'm overloading it. The exist checks are basically they're basically removing the higher level TOML files. Yeah. contributions welcome. Yeah, so basically, like, this list directory will not only will it include the folder names for the counties, but it will also include the TOML files for the state. So by doing this join and then this exists check, I'm filtering it down to just the county ones. Yeah, again, not my best work, but I think there's a lot of value in there's a lot of value in getting something done quick and dirty, and then figuring out where you need the structure as you need it. So yeah, I think I can partly justify this as in, like, I'm really trying to get it all, like, kind of set out by the end of the week, so that, like, after a weekend I can come back fresh and, like, focus on ESP, because I really should be doing ESP stuff. Heyo. Alvaro just sent the first PR. That's awesome. For Spanish support, which is really cool. And I think Spanish might be the number 2 spoken language in the US, so that would be super helpful. And if anybody wants a repo for their own country, let me know, because I think it would be cool to have electioncal.es for Spain or whatever, or co.uk. I would like to split this machinery out, but, like, kind of what I'm getting at is, like, a lot of this machinery is very specific. But, like, there is a balance between planning ahead and figuring out what you need to do in the first place. And so I've definitely leaned to the, like, just do it part in this case. Okay. I don't need the state directory. DCD says, agree that creating a prototype to help in understanding the problem is useful. Yep. And y'all are keeping me honest about not doing it too terribly. Okay, so state info and then counties. But yeah, think about the PyPortal case, because that's the case that I gotta deliver on. And let's call this lower. And then we don't need to do any of this. But we will want to, so the site directory is the one that I'm going to spit it all out into. So I'm going to do state lower and county lower, which is also easier to read. Charles asks, do you need to do languages like Creole? I would kind of take the same policy as CircuitPython does, is, like, if somebody wants it, we'll add it. Like, it's like, I only speak English myself, so it's really up to what people want to contribute. I won't say no. But if I had to prioritize, I would go based on, like, a list of, like, the most popular. Which actually brings me to I think the longer term working on the site is, once we have this calendar that's, like, all the dates, basically looking at the nearest dates and, like, validating those first. Because, like, the nearest election is likely the likeliest thing to have the nearest registration date deadline as well. Abominable asks if pirate. I mean, if you want to do pirate, like, we'll do pirate. But I don't know, maybe there's a certain segment of the U.S. electorate that would go for pirate calendars. But yeah. Mark points out we don't speak English, we speak American. Yeah, the en-us was implied. That's true. Should the URLs be en-us? That's actually a good question. Actually, no, that's not actually a good question. And the reason is that this site in particular is already scoped to the US. So there's no reason for us to have en-UK, for example. Like, this website is not for that. But yes, I agree, we speak American, not proper British English. Okay. County lower. could even say county info, state info, counties, county lower. And then that looks right. Like, let's indent this here. I can usually just make my window larger, but y'all can only see part of my screen. And then this needs to be state lower and county lower again. Yeah, Charles says down in Florida we have a lot of Creole, also in Louisiana too. Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, I'm like, I don't think the language you speak should dictate whether you can vote or not. Like, that's not the country I live in. County data. Okay, that's just this wrapper. County dates, that looks right. And then this is trying to sort counties. But we have to do this. Yeah. So DCD says, pardon my Python lack of knowledge, but what is the F prefix on the string in line 48? Yeah, this is something I'm just starting. People turns out they love them. They're called F strings, as Summersoft points out. And it basically formats the string immediately. So, and the names here are names of variables in that scope. So because I have county lower here and state lower here, this will be evaluated at this point to be site en, like Washington King, for example. So, okay. I need to do a similar sort. Oh, I did it down here. And then we'll run it and figure out if it's actually correct. County list. And then do I have just a... Oh, you know what? Let's make this a little easier. Let's say counties equals this. Variables are free. Although now that I said that, I'm like, but they're not free. They created a dictionary entry. Everything's a dictionary. That's what they don't tell you about Python. Everything's a dictionary. Abominable says, lol, I was so lost. I was at the orthodontist for the first half of the stream and didn't bother watching the first half. I thought this was... See, there's the social media preview. I thought this was about the restaurant thing he talked about 2 weeks ago. Did I talk about the restaurant thing? I must have mentioned it. Yeah, this is kind of an evolution of that idea. I did talk about how I was thinking about that. Yeah, this is about voter information. Yeah. Corky says, you need some automatic code formatting. I recommend Black. They say they are an opinionated code formatter. Yes, I agree. In CircuitPython, we're using Black in CircuitPython. I was very disappointed to discover that Black has a parameter for how long the line lengths are. Like, there's a few things you can configure, and that's one of them. And I'm just like, no, pick it. Like, just pick the line length. Because, like, MicroPython is doing Black, and they added the flag to change the line length, and we didn't. So I think that, like, between CircuitPython and MicroPython Python code, we're actually, like, there. You showed this already, but in the website, where is the info that is generated? All the generation stuff is still local to my computer. So when I was showing the website with like all the state lists, like that's just off my file system. So this is what, if you go to the website, you'll see right now is just the emoji. I had to look up the emoji. Ballot box calendar.us flag. Corky agrees with me. We don't need to change line length. We need to be very opinionated. Yeah, so this is just on my file system. But today, like my goal by today is that like when you go to the URL, this is what you'll get. But yeah, so I want to get it checked in. The last thing to do is basically run this build script and then deploy it. Robot calendar, US flag. So close. But yeah, if you want to follow along, I think this is pretty up to date. Like just these last few changes aren't in the repo. So you can fork and download and build it yourself if you like. The two scraping scripts are run separately. Could you copy them to the site? I could start scraping it for PyPortal. You're slightly ahead of me. All the data is in this. If you look at the repo, you'll see it. I could do it manually. Actually, you're right. I could manually deploy it once. But I really like the PyPortal stuff. I want it to be like a JSON file. Like it should be a URL you could fetch repeatedly and in a form that's not too bad. Yeah, sorry, the chat overlay. Oh, Blinka doesn't show. I can't see. It's too small for me. It's only showing the generic Unicode ones. That might make sense because it's probably it's rendered by the browser. It's actually a browser overlay, so Discord server emoji will not work. Okay, let's finish this up. We've got 8 minutes till 4 o'clock, which is the 2-hour mark. So let's just get this working, and then I'll check it in. So if people want to switch it to Path Live, you can. But then I want to get the GitHub Action stuff, and then once the deploy is working, like it'll go to the website and all that stuff, which will be cool. All right, I'm too busy reading the comments. Counties and then county list. That looks right. Let's pull up our terminal. Fastest stream ever. It's the same amount of time. You're just more enthused by my non-ESP work. I think it takes just over 2 seconds. Doesn't look like... If this works first time, like it just did without a Python exception, I'm kind of shocked. So this looks correct. Let's pull up the web version here, and let's just make sure all the states are here still. You can click New York and the index, and now we get these dates, and we can click the county, and the counties are sorted right. Oh, I saw one bug. County sorted here. I had this like I wanted to have like a little bit of a message, a little bit of a like really you should vote. Like we think it's important that you should vote. Yeah, Summersoft says, yeah, that's probably going to task the memory on a PyPortal without specific endpoints. If you do want to help with that though, I don't know if we have a library for parsing iCalendar files. So it would be, I feel like we did just do a project for this, but like it would be awesome if we had an iCalendar. Like if it was just like, give me an ICS file and we'll fetch it and we'll show like the next thing. Like that would be awesome. If you want to work on a PyPortal project, I say make a really easy example where you just give it an ICS file and it fetches it and it displays it. It'd be awesome. And it would work for this, even though ICS is definitely not the most thing. So this is what I saw that I want to fix. It's the lowercase version. So I think that's actually in the template. So if we look at the county template, the name is the lowercase name, which is not right. And that must be in the build site. And I think it's in the first, well, lower name. Huh. So why is it? County info. I'm not setting the name again. Is it just not correct in the data? This is why I like this crazy idea of folders with. I like to make the data browsable. So that's right. So what's the deal? Where is the display string stored? Right, so it gets bound at this point where like the county index.stream county data. Yeah, it looks like it's using the file name. County data is this dictionary. So this is the top level namespace that is going into the Jinja template, which is not this one. It's this one. It's county.name. County.name. It's also possible I need to is it possible I need to refresh? Does it cache? No. So it should be county info. Well, let's print it out and let's just see. Huh. Those look correct. Are we loading the wrong thing? State county index.html Jinja is county index. We're printing it out here. Is it possible it? No, it's not going to change between. Well, one thing is that I'm printing it out too early. But besides that, I am giving it the county data. Yeah. Coding while watching will make it go faster. That's very strange. Language, state, county, dates. Template, state, county, here. County.name. The name key should be coming from the TOML file. That's where it should be coming from. I wonder what lower name is. Yeah. That path looks right. New York, New York. Voter to ICS. But it's new _ New York. Is it possible I'm mutating it after the fact? That would be wild. Let's go back to build site. Let's print it out right before. So we generate, it's possible we're mutating it with the ICS thing, actually. It's not very likely. Like, it's preserved there. That's very weird. New York, New York. That might be why I picked it. Yeah, I guess I could print out county data. Am I like looking at the wrong file? Is it like something? Actually, maybe that's what I should do. Move site. Let's do a clean build. Maybe I'm not even building it. All right, so it's still built and it's still wrong. Let's dissect this. Language, state. All the counties in the state. And then county, lower name, name. Let's check something else. New York, New York. Wait. Are we somehow not writing? Oh, this is a problem. This FN is not correct. Maybe it's the last one we process? Like it's hanging on from the previous iteration of the loop. All right, let's do the delete again. Thank you all for hanging out with me and letting me do something that's not. Oops. Well, that seems like a bad thing too. Does Guam not have any counties? Guam should have been made here. All right, well. Oh, I missed an FN. Okay. Do. Yeah, that's a good idea. If it doesn't work, I'll do that. DCD is recommending only printing for if the state is New York, rather than flooding my console with stuff. But let's just see if it worked first. Well, the county list is broken. That's probably because I'm giving it the dictionary and I'm not giving it the list I sorted for it. Like that. And yes, I should do black. That would make it easier. Let's turn that print off for now. Even though I think it takes about the same amount of time. Friendly reminder to like the video and star the repo. Yeah, that would be awesome. Any help is welcome. Bonus points for integrating it with Adafruit stuff, because they've been kind enough to not buckle down on me. They had the same reaction. All right, so our list looks good. And it's still wrong here. That's so weird. Is that true for all counties? Putnam County, one I haven't looked at, it's also lower. Is it true across states? Pick one that I haven't visited. Yeah, it is. Is this like a weird Jinja thing? Let's just search for name. Like, I don't think we're setting it anywhere. Except if we're doing... No? No. Build site. The state one works just fine. County info. Oh, it could be something weird like this where it's like, should be a double equals. State lower, county lower. County data. If county lower equals New York. I could spell it right. This is definitely like a Jinja thing. So this is the election. And then there's all of the... This is all election stuff. That's what dates is. And then county. Lower name is New York, and name is New York County. That's bizarre. I think Jinja isn't seeing the county info level. We could try it. I mean, it's really weird to me though, because like the state one has state.name. See if it fails. It's in the double. And lower name is correct as well. Yeah, table object. Oh, it might be because it's not a plain dictionary, it's a Tamil thing. That's probably what it is that it's not a plain dictionary. Let's see what happens if we pass a plain dictionary in it. It's something masquerading as a dictionary. So let's undo this. and see if we just do county and then just convert it to a dictionary, what we get. I really should just print out county in that, shouldn't I? Lower name. That looks right. Hey. That fixed it. Yeah, so it's just some weird interaction with the TOMLKit stuff. New York County needs your voice. Yeah. Corky says, what kind of object is county? Maybe name is a reserved property that points to the file name. Yep. Well, it's, dictionary also says dictionary would be accessed by key, not attribute. So definitely not a dictionary, except it's Jinja. Jinja, I don't think is the same format. It is dot, I think. Like Jinja is weird. It's not just Python and Jinja. It's its own thing. Okay, let's wrap up. We're over time. You had me worried. Mark said how to fix it an hour ago. That's going to go down with dumping water over all over my keyboard, I think. Okay, I will commit this right now, as you see, and then work on the action stuff offline. Actually, let me delete the print first. We no longer need the print. Although it makes me want to do... The problem is that this dictionary thing doesn't recurse. So we may actually have... I'm surprised we don't have the same problem with state info, but... actually... Do we do it? Let's just do it here too. I thought I did that somewhere already. I could have sworn I wrote a comment that said like convert it to dictionaries already. Okay, let's do one last run to make sure it works, and then I'll commit it for those of you who are trying it. And then we'll wrap up. So that looks good. And let's just check this one page. That looks good. Okie doke. Get status, get add. There we go. Push straight to master. Let me switch back. TOML does not require TOML does not require the like box at the very top. If that's what you're talking about. Spook is grooming himself. Oh, I was going to switch back to this. All right. It's been over 2 hours. I got to stop streaming. My voice is tired. I really appreciate everybody being here and going on this side adventure with me. Y'all have been great and supportive, and I really appreciate it. Check my streams out every Friday at 2 p.m. Most of them will have to do with the ESP32-S2. But it really is just a matter of what I want to work on a Friday afternoon. Usually it's that. It's not always that. But I will always try to cover the things that I've done over the week as well. And if you want to know more about Black Lives Matter, you can go to adafruit.com/Black Lives Matter for a big smorgasbord of links about that. If you want to know more about this election stuff, it'll be electioncal.us. You can go to that right now, and it'll link you to the GitHub if you want to contribute later today. Hopefully it will be what I was showing on there. And whatever you think you can do to help the world is good. I recommend, working towards making the world a better place. I think a lot of people want to see it improve. However you think that could be, I trust you, and you should do it. If you want to support Adafruit, Adafruit.com is a place to go. They pay for me to work on open source software every day of every week, which is a very privileged and fortunate position to be in. I understand that, and I appreciate it. So please help them out. They've done a great job supporting all of their employees and team members, which include us contractors as well. So I hope you all have a great weekend. Reach out to me if you want to know more about this stuff, or if I can help in any way. You can find me on our Discord, the Adafruit Discord, which is adafru.it/Discord. And I'll talk to y'all next week, or on Discord before then. So cheers, and have a great weekend.